And hi, everybody. It is Thursday. It is noon if you're in Pacific Daylight Time, which I've heard will be the permanent time zone now. So sorry. And we are here. We are the Courier DevRel people, and we have with us Rachel. Rachel, say hi to the people. Tell us where you're from. You're here from Calendly.
Yes. Hi, I'm Rachael Wright-Munn. I'm a senior full stack engineer on our API squad, which means that I spend a lot of time trying to improve the developer experience for people working with Calendly.
I love that. Yeah, and that's why we asked you on, is that, since Courier is a tool for developers to send notifications, or we tried this more general term of just like code to user communication, right? Because it could be push notification or email or Slack message or whatever else. We've really been trying to think about what makes that good experience, what makes it a high quality experience for users. Well, wait, let's try to introduce herself. Oh my gosh, I'm being so rude. Okay, I got the left right thing right. See, I'm pointing the right way, folks. It happened just once.
You got it. Yes, I'm Shreya. I'm also a developer advocate for Courier. That's pretty much it.
Right. And we do this stream. We do this stream every week, but we're and by the way, thank you so much all the people who are watching on YouTube. This has been so cool. There are like 3,000 of you from last week, so that's just rad. So hi. If
Hi,
any of
YouTube.
you want swag, as usual, find me on Twitter at serverless_mom, and just DM me the word spaghetti, and I will get you some swag. It is a sacred promise. The people from last week who I have not sent swag to yet.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. Yeah. But so we were here to talk about Calendly. And of course, I'm excited to talk about Calendly because it is something that I just love. But, so I'm not going to talk about my story too much. Let's talk about what is the Calendly story and what is the product story that you want to tell people.
If you've never heard Tope talk about how he founded Calendly, it is an incredible story. I strongly recommend picking out one of the particular podcasts. I can't do justice to it here. We just had a Forbes article that came out that hit the highlights, which are that he was working his day job and he had managed to save up about $200,000, which he then invested entirely in founding Calendly, which is amazing when you consider the fact that he had actually tried a couple of different companies before this and decided that those weren't a good match. But what I love is how he explains it, because he basically says that what you need to found a good company is you need to care about the problem and have passion, and other people need to care about it too. So at Calendly, what we do is we make scheduling really, really easy and really, really beautiful. And we basically enable people for everything around that. So for example, you mentioned Courier does messaging. That's really cool. There's a lot of messaging that happens around events, both before and afterwards. And we try and automate as much of that as possible. But our main focus is, how do we make it easy for people to make events and schedule with other people? And then
now I will tell my Calendly story. So my life situation is I have stuff on my personal calendar that is stuff related to family and my kids. And then I also have a few things in my calendar that are from a shared calendar with my ex, who's, the co-parent to my kids. And so those are both times when I am not available for work, right? Then I have a work calendar, and then I'll do some contracting on the side, which will have its own calendar. And so when someone says, can I have a meeting with you, it's 4 or 5 emails back and forth to figure out when we're both available, because I'll end up looking at my work calendar and then realize, oh darn, I'm supposed to be in parent teacher conferences, or I'm supposed to be doing some other event, or I said to my family that I would help with something. And so what I now have is just the one Calendly link that says, hey, just look here and just grab a time with me. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about, and I'm sorry, we'll get all into this shortly, is the way that basic service is something that I think most of us as developers, we can sort of imagine, oh yeah, I kind of get how that could work. And we'll talk about that in a second. A lot of the things about SaaS is very often you're doing something that's you often get this comment that's well, I could build this myself with a Raspberry Pi and Gumption, right? Okay. But then there's the second stage. There's these secondary use cases. So in my case, I'll schedule with contract writers who often have their own artist schedule in life. And so they'll reschedule. Some of them, they'll reschedule twice before we ever even meet up. And instead of there being this long messaging back and forth, hey, this doesn't work for me, and then that message is wherever it is, and then I have to go and find the item and cancel it, they're able to just go in Calendly and say, hey, I need to reschedule this. And I'll get only the actual, like they'll see, okay, well, when do you want to do this meeting? And then I'll only see a message saying, hey, they rescheduled this one thing, right? Which is, I mean, it's better than even when a coworker changes the work schedule. Like it is so elegant, and that is just so nice.
We get a lot of people who are like, I can build that. That's not an issue.
Yes.
And then we're like, what about time zones? AM versus PM, like 24-hour. Are you going to be good with that? And then we have a whole bunch of functionality that as like an external user, you don't necessarily see. That's really incredible. Actually, can I show this really quick? I know we said we were going to have like a demo,
yes,
but I do actually kind of want to show
get like
this.
one step of zoom in and enhance?
Oh yeah, sure.
Alexa, play the CSI Miami theme song.
We're at 150% now.
Love it.
So,
love it. We got him.
Most people are like, I can schedule like a thing that's like, oh, I'm going to send an event to 2 people. But like one of my favorite features of this is the fact that you can actually go in here and you can modify when people can book it. And you can say, I want to add a buffer before and after this specific type of event for this amount of time.
Yes,
and they'll say things like,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I can build it. But then can you collect payments afterwards? You mentioned you do contracting work, right?
Yeah. And so this is something I'm aware. It doesn't make sense for my use case, but absolutely the ability to be like, hey, let me consult for 2 hours and just have your first interaction with someone be, this sounds really cool. I would love to help consult on that. Let me just send you a Calendly link, and just right in there is like, hey, it's going to be $245 for, a 90-minute session or whatever it is. Yeah, you can build that. You can build something with the Stripe API. You can maintain your Stripe keys, and you can do all that on your Raspberry Pi.
But then can you have it automatically set up a Zoom, a GoToMeeting, or any of the other integrations? Like, people are like, I can make a meeting that's on both calendars, but there's just so much more that goes into it, especially because you mentioned you have like 6 different calendars.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about looking at all 6 of those events and then figuring out which time slots are available, in terms of like,
and one of those calendars, I don't even have, I'm not the admin on it, right? I just have visibility for it in another calendar, right? So Calendly is able to pick up that I show the times on that shared calendar as busy. It's like, that's just not, and it's able to say there's a buffer time, how far in advance you have to schedule a meeting, which is a big one for me for scheduling with contract writers. Is like, hey, I really wanted to look in the morning and know what my day is going to be like. I do not want someone scheduling something that's like, hey, can you meet in 20 minutes? Absolutely not, right? I don't care how free my afternoon looks.
I want to jump in real quick and say, like, personally, the flexibility of it is, and like the reliability of it, both of those aspects are so important. Just for me, like, I live my entire life on Google Calendar. Like, if I have to clean the bathroom, that's on the Google Calendar. If I have to like go get groceries, that's on the Google Calendar. Just to know that like I don't have to share that information, and that if anyone's scheduling a meeting with me, I know that they're not going to block out a time that's important to me that I've like reserved for myself. And every other like integration, the Zoom integration, everything that you've talked about. I'm so curious, Rachel, what is your experience like? How did you get into Calendly? What has your experience been like so far?
Oh, sure. Do we want to take down the shared screen?
Oh yeah, well, go ahead and pull it. Yeah. Here, look, I'll even make you. I'll make you the star. Whoa!
That's too big. Everybody can see my bags.
Whoa! This is like the Bob's Burgers Zoom. That's like whoa!
So what I really look for when I'm looking for new companies is I look for companies that are Rails shops, because I'm a Rails developer. Calendly is built in Rails. It's got a nice monolith in the middle that we're like separating out. I look for companies that are in a really good spot revenue wise. So one of the things that's important to me, and this is just like, this is me joining Calendly. Right?
I love this. This is the way I answer this interview question. And they always want to be like, well, you guys are unique. There's never been anything like this before. But I'm like, what's your revenue like? And do I like using the product? Well, you go ahead. You tell your story. But yeah.
No, yeah, that's actually my third one also, is I really like a beautiful project or product that's like easy to explain and understand. And with Calendly, like I've had cases where I'm talking to somebody, like somebody will ask me like, what do you do at a restaurant? And I'll just be like, well, I work for a company that makes scheduling really, really easy, basically what you can do. And I normally use the use case of like, so actually I use Calendly with my friends now. Because it's hard because you're like, here's when I'm available, here's when you're available, and then I need to actually create the invite and put a Zoom link on it. And like, I do most of my communication through my phone nowadays. So like I have to wait until I leave my phone and go to the computer. So I'm just like, here's my Calendly link.
Yeah, I just want to tell you that I have like an Android snippet on my phone, because normally I just type out my Calendly URL from memory. I do not check my calendar. I do not look at it. I'm like, I don't have it updated to my new last name, but it's NFee, but I'm just like /NFee. Go ahead and grab some time with me. We'll talk then. Yeah.
I love that.
Like the idea that it's not just looking at your personal schedule, it's also helping the person who's trying to book the meeting say, hey, by the way, you're probably going to be busier at that time.
Yeah.
It just does everything for you. You don't have to look at your own calendar.
Yeah. I've only had one person ever come back like, is this time okay? They were kind of asking a lot of me. They were a person I did not know, asking for a ton of like resume advice, but everybody else just understands for the Calendly design. And we're going to talk about the power of that design, that it's like, these are times when it's really okay to meet with me. You're not just guessing here, because they sort of show they don't show so many options that a person feels like, oh, I'm just sort of picking a random time. They're like, oh yeah, this is when I'm available at these times. Yeah.
You mentioned like finding the person's availability. So if somebody has a Calendly and they are logged into Calendly, we'll also on the page recommend that they log into Calendly. We'll show them what times they're available next to the person they're scheduling with availability.
That's really, really cool. That's really cool.
And it'll import your calendar so you can be like, do I actually care about this meeting that's a conflict?
Nice. That's cool. Can I talk about my one Calendly bug that I'm aware of right now?
Yes.
It's not even a Calendly bug. It's just a failure state I don't think is quite right, which is, for myself, I'll work these contracts for not terribly long, but then very often these days you get set up with your own Google Workspace account for that contract. They're like, oh yeah, to look at Google Docs. I think you know what I'm talking about already, which is when that account gets deleted, the failure state is a little odd, where my Calendly still shows up as available to people. They can click 30 minutes, and then I think they even can click a day, and then it's like, this person's Calendly is not available. And I will say, this is actually a notifications thing. This is like a Courier thing. Next is like, as far as I could tell, I didn't get any kind of notification that this was a state that Calendly was in. So I just had to have a potential client, come back and say, hey, is everything okay? Like, your Calendly's unavailable. And like, I went and checked. It's like, oh, looks fine to me. And I had to go into all the way to schedule before it was like, oh yeah, no. And so it was a little weird to go and see like, hey, I have 7 calendars connected. One of them is not authenticating. And so now no one can schedule any time with you. So I don't like, again, this was definitely not like, oh, this is a bug. It was like, oh, like, I think maybe this failure path is a little off.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'll pass that on to support and see if we can get,
I should go open a ticket. I've been a pro user for all these years. Yeah, I should go open a ticket about it.
That's what I love it. Like, it's all about the developer experience and the user experience. And Rachel's like, I got this. Like, we're going to get this fixed, like, immediately.
Well, okay. I can't promise that. I can say like, hey, I'm going to go like,
so everyone,
ask around like,
this probably fixed my next. I'm sorry. Like, again, this is actually like a UX thing that may well be like, there is no right thing to do, right? Someone else might come back and say, hey, my connection broke. And so then that was my like nuclear submarine piloting that was broken, and people schedule over a bunch of my nuclear submarine piloting. Like, you should not have let someone schedule if one of the calendar connections broke, right? Like, so that might be that this is exactly the perfect operation for somebody else. But
I really liked what you said about notifications though. Like the fact that you didn't feel aware and didn't feel notified, because I think that what's important about SaaS products in particular is not necessarily like dealing with everybody's problem in like the most optimal way and like having the perfect solution for everybody. It's about enabling your users to make decisions through information. right?
Yeah.
So like maybe I tell you like one of your calendar connections is like on the home page, real obvious when you're looking at it. One of your calendar connections is broken. You need to fix this. And I'm not.
Yeah.
If you wanted like API documentation change, like we could talk about that directly.
No,
but,
no,
like,
I know,
I'm not
you're not
directly
going to
in
change the
charge
product.
of
Don't
that
worry, don't worry. I
team,
know
so
we're
I'm
talking
not
about
going
the
to make any promises here. But like, I really think it's more important that you notify the user what the issue is, what the
Yeah.
potential fix is, and why it's an issue, and
Yeah,
give
an interesting
them
thing about like
the decision.
the evolution of SaaS is that when I got my start in the tech industry, which is doing tech support, I had this request at New Relic, which was when something stops reporting data, notify me, right? Because it was like they would have an outage. They'd be like, oh, let's see what's going on. And they'd find out that one of their servers had stopped reporting data 2 weeks ago. For most people, a server no longer reporting data is not a notable event, right? It's like servers get pulled up and down. This was pre kind of the, cattle, not pets or whatever it is, pre the like, virtual machine world. But even then it's like, yeah, servers come up and down all the time. I don't want to get some high alert. And there was also at the time, this was 7-8 years ago, there was only a few ways that the software could get in touch with the human, right? And some of those looked very like, ding, 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 we got a problem. So, at the time at New Relic, there really wasn't a middle state of communication, which is something like this would absolutely be, is like, hey, a connection is broken. And like, fundamentally, I think that when you go log into the product, that it's not going to be working quite the way you expect. So I want to tell you about that, but I don't want to make you think that like, your baby Maggie Simpson is dead, right? I just want to say like, yours, yeah, let's see when the baby proofer comes by and it's like dead tired of baby proofers who don't give you full estimates. Your baby has died. But yeah, that at the time I really had to say like, hey, that's really not something that we can meaningfully do. And the other part was, in that case, not to get in the weeds of this, but there really wasn't like an ability to have some kind of state on the server that said, hey, we haven't heard from this person in a little while. Like we could take in new rows to the database, no problem. But could we really see like, hey, we've had no reports from the database in this long? So there were two pieces that had to exist before. Now New Relic will do this. Now New Relic will be kind of like, hey, some of these things seem to be showing much less data than we would expect.
And while we're on this topic about like how you provide like those notifications and then enable those developers to do the best job, could you tell us about the developer experience of Calendly? And
yes, we should talk about your stuff, so you're not making promises for other teams to fix stuff.
So I am really happy and excited because we've just launched a new developer portal. We already had a lot of these pieces, but what we've done is we've kind of reorganized them. There's a lot of actually really cool stuff that we do. It kind of breaks down into 3 different sections. And if we wanted to like screen share, I can like talk about this a little bit.
Oh yeah, let's turn on.
Intense.
So we kind of break this down into a couple of different pieces. One we break it down into is like webhooks, right? So with webhooks, what we're kind of focusing on is like, what are the downstream effects of scheduling an event? And do you want to set something custom up, right? And I assume by developer experience, we're talking about external developers, right? Otherwise, I've just completely missed this section.
No, we got it. Yeah. So the idea here,
okay,
right?
Cool.
And of course, we're curious about this because this is the only people using Courier are going to be developers, right? So, for us, is like what we think about is like, how do we make sure that every developer logging in here is like seeing clearly like, oh, this is what I would do with it. Here's the potential for it without being given this absolute just garbage bag full of tools. It's like, well, there's 100 ways to automate and 1,000 different API calls and such.
No, absolutely. And I think that one of the things that we've done here that's really key is we've kind of broken these down into descriptions of things you might want to do, right? So instead of saying like, you can find information about webhooks here, we say automate your processes, right? So we say automate next steps within your product based on scheduled events, which is actually our webhooks, right? And what we do—
oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm like talking way too much for an interview, but I was literally just today, we were talking about something called automations within Courier. And I was saying, they're saying, oh, we want to move automations up in the interface because we want more people to use it. And I said, well, this may not always make sense in the docs or in the UI, but I need to start with what are we actually doing, right? So not automations, but like automatically reply to messages that are more than 2 days old. right? Like, what is the use case that we're actually going to do? What are we going to do with this tool?
Exactly. Speaking of what are we going to do with this tool, we have a demo application that kind of
Can we get like
demonstrates
a
how to
one
use.
step of zoom in and enhance, maybe 2 steps?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I tried to do 125 on most of these.
Nice.
But we'll
Alexa,
go up to
play the
150.
CSI New Orleans theme.
Zoom and enhance. But basically what this does is it shows how to build applications, and it gives you an example of like what it would look like to set something up with webhooks. I don't have this currently set up, and the demo itself takes like 10-20 minutes to run. So I'm not prepared to do that today because this is just one of the many things we use.
Yeah.
But what I really like about this is it gives people code examples of how to do things in Calendly.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think this is really powerful because I imagine that a lot of your people's path in here has been, hey, we like using Calendly, we like using the UI. Can we, as a team, can we do this next thing, right?
Yeah.
Where it's very possible that at that stage, there are no Calendly experts on the development or product team or the enablement team. So the more that you can say like, okay, essentially, like how would you even authenticate with Calendly, right? Like how would you even do any kind of actions? That's a really big piece.
It is. And speaking of like, I like the Calendly UI, right?
Yeah.
The next thing that we kind of like focus on is embedding Calendly in our site. So we have one demo site that I absolutely love called calendly-embed.com. So there's a couple of links you jump through to get to the site. So I'm not like hopping all over the web. I know we're going from like developer.calendly.com to like buzzword CRM to Calendly embed, but I promise these are all linked to from the developer site.
They're also linked to the show notes, folks. So take a look at the show notes. They're right there.
Wow.
Well, I mean, when this thing is distributed as a recording, don't look now. The show notes are empty. But
so what we have is we have like these different use cases, right? So each of these is kind of customized for what the use case would look like. And then we demonstrate what the embed itself would look like inside of that use case. So like for this one, we've got customer success, because that's one of our really big things is like people from customer success are trying to help a customer. So we're like, this is what your Calendly page could look like, right? And then if you select one of these, like it takes you directly to the next Powered by Calendly section. So you can kind of see like, this is what it would look like to embed. You can come in here and you can like open this up and inspect it. You can like this is just a legit website that has no times left.
So instead of like flailing around for like who's using Calendly well right now, you can just say, oh, well, here's an example. Like these people don't know what they're doing. They work there.
Exactly. And we demonstrate all of the different options. I'm only going to do one more. This is one of my absolute favorite sites that we have and demonstrations that we have because I love the way it shows off how we can embed stuff. But yeah, this one just like does a little pop-up.
Nice.
Exactly. So you get this visual, immediate feedback that's like, here is what this is going to look like on your site.
Wait. I want to see that third option though. Can we close this modal and look at guest webinar? I'm just so curious that like where it's like registered down there. Does that?
Ta-da!
Okay. So it's like go and click over to this time and it's available at that time.
Yeah.
Neat.
I absolutely love the pop-up. I think it's so easy to use, and you can like quickly go back to your previous page and change over it.
Hey, speaking of which, everybody, I think we should get together and start pronouncing modal just to mess with people.
Modal.
We should convince them that that's right. Oh, it's pronounced modal. You didn't know that? I'm sorry. We're gonna open this modal right over here. My trouble with this modal is that there's no close button on it, so I'm stuck with this modal in front of my screen.
What does modal even mean? Where does it come from? We don't know, so let's call it a modal.
There is, by the way, a linen hybrid synthetic cloth called modal, which is spelled the same way. So I'm like, oh yeah. So fiber arts background.
Okay.
But yeah,
I want to know more, but I know we have limited time. So conflicted.
I'm definitely not Googling this in the background.
Ooh, I have a good segue. Speaking of limited time, if you're a developer and you want to use Calendly very like quickly, right? There's a lot of things that you can do with it besides just, having that pop up. What are the various things that we can do? What are integrations that we can add into Calendly? Like what is everything? What's the world look like?
So we have a whole bunch of first-party integrations. Let me think really quickly. Yeah, okay. Whew, yes. I don't want to spoil anything. All right. So we have our first-party integrations, and these are all ones that like have already been developed for Calendly. And I'm not going to click into API and webhooks because I think that would reveal my actual API key. I don't remember off the top of my head. There's like a feature
Real.
flag that's going to protect it, but I don't know. I don't think I have that on in this account. But yeah, so these are a lot of the first party integrations that we have, and these are all ones that like we have developed internally. But what's really cool is we've got 3 people who have agreed to have their partnerships, like, oh gosh, I'm losing the words real quick.
They're like a use case featured. Or yeah.
Yes, exactly. We actually had an article, this one, where we went through and we talked specifically with one of our major partners called Active Campaign. Oh wait, is this Typeform? Okay, so this is Typeform. Typeform is another of our major partners. But down here, we literally talk through like how Active Campaign has integrated with Calendly inside their platform and like how it connects and everything. So like it's not just like us creating integrations through our documentation and through our, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, and through our API that we have. Like this allows other people to integrate with us as well. And we've created some new OAuth flows that allows our Calendly customers to authenticate and give them permissions to access their account. So we're starting to get some.
So you're even this is even allowing people to develop integrations that just don't work just on their site, but are like a Shopify component or what have you that lets them make it available within some other framework.
It lets them do a lot. I mentioned earlier that we have the webhooks. So basically, if you wanted to trigger anything off of a scheduled event, like let's suppose you sat there and you were like, I don't like Stripe, I don't like PayPal, I really want to use this platform. You could even go in and say like, hey, I've got scheduled events. Hang on. Webhooks. Yay. So
yes, like an example would be, events. I want to send them a thank you gift every time they schedule, right? Because I'm doing outbound sales, right?
Yes, exactly. And like whatever that platform is, they can create an integration with Calendly. And then we're just like, hey, as a user, go to that account, OAuth with your Calendly account, and then we're going to handle like subscriptions and cancellations. Well,
sending through like a notification through to that. Oh, that's very neat. That's very, very neat. So
we're very excited.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
Yeah, I definitely think, one of these themes that we've been picking up on lately is this idea that like very often successful SaaS is about doing something that someone sort of maybe erroneously thinks they could do themselves, just doing it a lot better and easier to implement. It is funny how there's the counterpart to that too, which is actually doing all of this stuff capably would be super hard, right? That like not even saying that it's available and reliable 24 hours a day and when it's down and you don't have to maintain all those other pieces. Even just having a working system to do this, if you sit and write down all these features, you're like, oh, that would be very difficult, And I think there's another piece to a really good product or a really good concept like Calendly is that it's an idea that's so successful that people are always going to keep coming back and wanting to do a little bit more with it. So this reminds me of why I understood that Courier was a good idea. Was I actually remembered from way back as an essay at New Relic that people were trying to hack PagerDuty to send notifications to their users because they love PagerDuty so much. They were like, PagerDuty is so cool. Can we just like send you a bunch of other random SMS numbers and have you notify them because it's the best way to notify people? And it was like, hey, yeah, that's not really the tool for this. But like when people love, PagerDuty or Calendly enough, they're going to keep saying, hey, I want to do this next thing, right? So like webhook integration is going to be part of the story eventually.
I think you've got a really good point. And I think it might be even a little bit bigger than that. I think it's if you've got communication facilitation in a SaaS product, people are always going to say, well, I'm communicating this I need to do this thing along with that communication.
Mhm.
Because we're talking about PagerDuty. PagerDuty is like, oh no, there's been an error. I need to go notify these people, right?
Mhm.
What else do you need to do? Do you
Yeah.
need to make an issue? Do you need to open in Slack like an incident? Like,
Yeah.
do you need to do that all the time or just some of the times? Like, the decision tree is what the person is still doing. But the manual tasks of like create this, have a template, blah, blah, blah. There's always going to be some other piece that needs to be communicated. And I think
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, yeah, scheduling falls into the exact same category. It's all about communication. When are you available? When am I available? What else do we need to do? Like, what links do you need?
I should have screenshot. I was looking into like how people talk about Calendly on like Reddit and other communities. I'm sorry I went on Reddit, by the way, everyone. I apologize. But one of the things that you saw a couple times an interaction. I mean, there's one that's really good. I really should have screenshot it, which was like, oh, I really dislike Calendly. And someone's like, oh, why? They're like, well, just, I'm getting this stuff at all these hours of the day, and it's my boss and my boss's boss. And so I got to go do it. And it always reveals to them when I have time available. And I find myself having to make like fake time blocks of stuff so that people won't. And it's really reminded me very strongly of the people who say, oh, I absolutely hate Jira. When they turns out, what do they hate? They hate the 3-hour story point meetings every Thursday. And they hate the, 2-hour this, and they hate this, and they hate the back and forth and all this stuff. It's like, okay, what you hate is your team and the way that they're treating you, right? Your job is what you hate. Jira is the symptom of you hating your job, right? Like, and so the people had even replied about that on Reddit. They've been like, oh, well, I think really you just have like really bad practices and your team is really disrespectful of your time. Or maybe you do a better job communicating. Like Calendly has these settings to say, this is blockout time or this is not available, right? And I think that's really true, is that if a bunch of the communication you get is disrespectful or not what you would like it to be, then any tool that makes that communication easier is actually going to increase your stress. Where, of course, I associate Calendly with like absolutely my life being so much easier. And someone saying, hey, can we meet up Tuesdays? I never have to have the panic attack. I'm like, oh, I think so. I think 10 o'clock works. Where I was like, I never have to communicate with anyone about rescheduling. It's so nice.
Mm-hmm. I think Calendly is really good at allowing you to configure and set boundaries around your time. But I do kind of wonder about this one, and I'm hoping they're talking about Jira, because just to be real, there's a big difference between Jira and Calendly. Calendly is a delightful user experience and makes everything easier. And in Jira, if I have an Epic open and I want to add a ticket to the Epic, I have to be like, I'm going to go to the top bar and create it. And I'm going to say, here's the squad.
Well, because Jira, right, is trying to encapsulate all forms of communication about a project, right? So it's like templating, defaulting, all these things are incorporated in Jira. Whereas Calendly really should be, there's only a few motivations to schedule something with Calendly, right? Like, it's basically, hey, I want to meet up at this time, right? Like, it's not, I wish to communicate that I'm unavailable at this time. Do you have some way to make a negative Calendly, right? Like all these other things that, like, if you were Jira, you would. But Cole Horvat, we agree that some crimes can never be forgiven. We don't know what this is about, but they can.
I think this is a reference to the Reddit comment that you made earlier.
Yes,
about
I know.
Yeah.
I know what it was, but I also just wanted to put. I'm gonna leave it off for the rest.
It's
of
a
the
great comment.
Crimes can never be forgiven. Good point.
There are some nice corners of Reddit. I've been on our Beyond the Bump and stuff like that lately, and it's just like a really nice, supportive community.
I don't know what Beyond the Bump is, but it sounds nice. I spend a lot of time on a couple of like DevOps subreddits that are like perfectly nice. Yeah. And also like quite aggressive about shutting down stuff that is just a hassle. Yeah. But yeah, it is funny how just sort of diving into any old subreddit, you're like, oh boy, the culture of this is way off. Reddit was the first place where I would share like, hey, I wrote a thing about how to do this kind of authentication, where someone would reply like, hey, I don't think you should do authentication that way, and you shouldn't be allowed to write code, and you should stop writing forever. I disagree with your opinion about like the right kind of tape to use on this envelope, and I hate you as a result. It's like, what on earth? How can anyone care about this? It's my job to care about it, and I don't care about it this much. That one always surprises me.
Yeah.
I feel like on Dev, we have a little more fun on dev.to. Okay. So,
Did you say that some people need therapy?
yeah.
Especially people on Reddit.
One of the ones that always really got me that I saw a couple times on Reddit is you would see these people who had like really strong opinions about, to me, quite, because I don't have a computer science degree. So I would say, hey, I think you should do this optimization of this index in this way. Do I know what I'm talking about or not? And sometimes people would reply like, oh, you should do it this other way. Fine. Some people have really strong opinions about this. Oh, you should never use Postgres for this kind of thing. I was like, I don't think that's true, but okay. And then I would go sort of look at their accounts, and I realized that these people spent all of their time on Reddit, and they were a ton smarter than I will ever be. They're like, oh, I wrote this little tool that helps you visualize the connections between every Reddit user within a subreddit, and it makes this crazy glyph, and I wrote this in 2 days. And then they'd have some other posts like, hey, my boss is, taking away all of our laptops because he says we're spending too much time, at lunch on them, and he's locking them up for lunch. And I'm just like, you're being treated like such garbage. You have such a low-level IT job, and you're like the smartest person I've ever seen. And yet you're not spending time on fixing that. You're just yelling at people on Reddit. And I'm always like, you're burning so many calories on Reddit. I work at DevRel. I'm paid to be here. This is my job. I don't know why you're here all this time.
Okay, I like that terminology for thinking about something and spending too much time and care. You're burning too many calories on Reddit.
Yeah. You're burning a lot on this.
Speaking of people who are burning a lot of calories, this happened very shortly after the Twitter post that I think his name is Sam or something did, where he was basically like, I hate Calendly with a burning passion, and it's fully ego driven and all this sort of stuff, right?
Oh, I did not see this. Oh, I wish it'd come up in my.
It was.
I want to show you a screenshot of a tweet. Does Calendly suck? This is a gotcha show now.
But there were a lot of people who, just like you were saying earlier about communication, bringing it full circle here, they felt like Calendly was somehow involved in this back and forth of whose ego was more important, which Calendly link did you click on, and they were kind of oh, well, if it's not an email back and forth to figure out who's gonna have time and all this sort of stuff,
yeah,
you're saying your time is more important than mine.
Yeah, people need to get, it's not that deep. We're just trying to save time. It's not that deep.
Yeah.
I feel that's what people who love Calendly say.
Yeah.
I had somebody, I'm sure it was an email automation thing where I had sent him my Calendly, but it was in the third paragraph of an email. And so he actually sent his back. And I'm like, this is fine. That's a normal thing that would happen. Yeah. I will say I did not realize that if I was logged into Calendly that it would show my availability with theirs. So that's good to know. I'm definitely going to try that one out.
Yes. That's a really beautiful feature. I started with Calendly about 2 years ago, and that one actually came out while I was there, and we were all very, very excited about it.
That is so neat. Yeah. So, Rachel, here we have to ask that question. Okay. Was there anything we were supposed to? Now I'm going to look finally at our agenda for this thing. Okay. Story behind Calendly. Rachel's ready Calendly. Integrating Calendly with other tools. Developer experience. We still want to have people use Calendly. Yes, I think we got it all. I guess we didn't cover that there was this thing we talked about in rehearsal, which was this idea that while you want to make this available to developers, you don't want them to re-implement the whole Calendly UI generally, right? There's a lot of little subtle experience things that work really good in Calendly that we don't want them to get some JSON object with your availability and try to re-implement that calendar and clicker and all that stuff. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Can you share my screen really quick? Yep. So I actually had a demo set up, and I wanted to kind of show this. This is really pretty, right? And if you were logged in, you would see your availability alongside this. And now I use UTC time, and I use it with 24-hour time. But nobody else in the whole world wants to join me in banishing time zones. So, for example, Nika, if you wanted to schedule a time with me, you can come in here and you can say, I'm on Pacific time. And also, I think 24-hour time is ridiculous. So I'd like to see some AMs and some PMs here. And you can see oh, yes, Rachel is available between 2 p.m. and 4:15 p.m. my time. Right.
Which would happen automatically, I'm pretty sure, if Nika was in a different time zone, right?
Yeah.
The
So by
Pacific
default,
time.
when visiting this, again, this is one of these many things about the actual experience. Is like by default, when you're visiting the site, it tries to figure out your time zone and just sets it to that.
Yeah.
That's correct. It would pick up that it's Pacific time. The AM, PM versus 24-hour time is like stored in a cookie. So like I'm going to have to go in afterwards and reflip it back to 24 hours. But it does pull that it's UTC or like whatever your current computer's time zone is. But maybe your computer is in a different time zone for some reason, right? Like there are a lot of different things that can happen. My point is, this is a really nice experience. And honestly, this is what sets Calendly apart. We don't really want people re-implementing this. Plus, we already have a whole bunch of different ways to handle like offering calendar times. And it's really important that people not step on times that aren't actually available, right?
Yeah.
So for example, if I had like that 15-minute
if you feel
buffer
like
time,
you've been clicking around 5, 6, 7 times and seeing no times available this day, no times available this day. Oh, you guessed wrong again. You're gonna really lose people from that point in your funnel.
Mm-hmm. And that's why we're kind of like, we want people to use our beautiful Calendly experience, right? That's what our embed support, that's what our webhooks support. We allow people to get like scheduled links and embed them. There is something very secret that's coming up, but even that is going to direct you back to this experience. So yeah,
I really feel that because there's all these little subtleties in this UI that are really important. I did just drop a link, by the way, into the both chats about Swatch Internet Time, which was an idea I think from 1999. Of course, Rachel's like, yeah, of course, Swatch Internet Time. Everyone knows about this, which was attempting to make all time be a series of 1,000 separations. So the idea was that instead of time, we were just going to have beats. And so just all the time was going to be the same time. So if you get up at beat 80 or you get up at beat 645, that's your problem. That's not like time is not going to handle that anymore. And they even made some beat watches.
This is very fascinating. I've never heard about
this is certainly before your time, Shreya.
Yeah.
This is but this was like there was this thing of like in 1999 there was a feeling that internet connectivity was going to change all of our lives in absolutely fundamental ways, and none of us truly realized how bad that was. We didn't know. We thought that it was going to have some good aspects, and we were completely wrong. But
I love how we all work for like SaaS products, and we're just like shitting on the internet. Like,
not like the internet. I've been staying home
genuinely
from COVID, but I can still see my
friends. There's a million ways that like the connectivity that is now delivered by like internet experiences. And oh my God, it was like the Zoom CEO who said, think about splitting work in half. You have online schedules, calendars, meetings, web conferences, and then you have the time in the office talking. And think about losing one of those, and how we were very surprised that when you lost all the time in the office, you could still do work. But I don't think anybody would have disagreed in 2019. If you lose all internet, work is really not going to happen. Certainly not at the same level that it used to, right? If you say, oh, well, we can't share calendars and we can't email each other and we can't have online meetings, it's like, oh yeah, work is going to come to a standstill. Just go home, everybody. Just forget it, And so even before we got this amazing surprise that we could all do this stuff capably, right, without in-person components, this was really true. It's like, oh my gosh, this is real basic stuff. Yes. And of course, yes, I suppose there have been one or two good aspects to being on the internet, including my ability to look up Swatch Internet Time at any time.
The Swatch Internet Time, the reason I was laughing is because nobody has figured out how the whole Earth-Mars thing is going to work.
Right, the soul. We're syncing up with the soul.
So Mars is really, really, really close to Earth. It's like a full rotation of Mars is only like 30 minutes off. So people are trying to be like, what if we just put a few secret seconds in there to like nudge it a little bit closer? And I'm like, if we go to a planet that is not Mars, this is not gonna work anymore, y'all.
Mhm.
That's so interesting.
I don't know.
If
Okay.
we're all living like below the ice in Europa. It's like that's not going to make any sense. Europa rotates like every like 12 hours. Yeah.
So like trying to sync time with celestial bodies is something that to me occurs as I have lots of opinions on time zones. We should probably stop before I get too into
I
this.
want a whole live stream dedicated to this topic.
Time
I've
zones.
never thought about it, and my brain is just like going in every
We should schedule one that's called like time zones and why they suck.
Yeah.
We can have
Time zones and why you don't want to implement them.
we can have like a clock person on and a train person to talk about how we used to do time before the train.
Yeah.
We just had local noon. You didn't have time zones. Of course, it was totally unnecessary.
Okay, but think about this. Like a day takes a different amount of time. Like the sun
Yes.
comes up and goes down.
Oh my gosh, I saw this thing about a year ago, which was a Tudor clock from a Tudor monastery, and it wilded me out. It had a pendulum. It had 4 sets of pendulums with different lengths, which will change the speed that the clock operates. And I knew this. I knew that medieval books of hours says, you do this, and these are the 12 day hours, and these are the 12 night hours, and what you do for every one. Well, I hadn't even thought about this. Like, what did that mean in summer and winter? Well, what they did was they had a clock that told them hours, and it just operated slower at night in winter. And so they changed the pendulum like at dawn and dusk, right? So it was like an hour of the day in winter was like 25 minutes. Yeah, and an hour of the day in summer was like an hour 40, or well, I don't know what the ratio is, but yeah. Because it's like, how else? Because you have matins, that's time to get up, right? You don't want to like have matins is at 6:45 today. You don't want to do that, right? It's like matins is at 6 every day. Yeah.
People underestimate how incredibly complicated time is and how historically and culturally saturated it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like
Time's
the
fake.
sandwich hot dog debate. Yeah.
Time's fake, everybody.
It is. Well, it's not fake, it's invented.
Yeah.
Which is much more exciting.
Time's fake is clearly what they call linguistic glossing, where it's like everyone can nod and agree to that, but that's actually they're thinking of different things when they're trying to cover it. So Rachel, as we always ask at the end of the show, where do you want to be found?
At Shell Codes. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on GitHub. You can find me on Twitch. I do a little bit of Calendly stuff and like mention stuff that's coming up in Calendly that I think is really exciting. And I'm trying to figure out how to format a job opportunity post, but that's what you can find on my Twitter feed that's related to Calendly.
I love it. Hey, we don't want to talk about Calendly. You don't want to talk about Courier. That's the whole deal, folks. We can have fun. You can find Shreya on Twitter at ShreyTheCray. Look at how it's spelled down there. I'm not going to say it again. You can find me at serverless_mom. There's an underscore now because my account got taken away because I got divorced, changed email addresses, and changed my phone all in the same month. And then I lost a Twitter account. That's just something that you just have to live with. That's why serverless mom is no more. Folks, we will be back next Thursday with more exciting people. You can check out developer.calendly.com. All those links are down in the show notes. Thank you so much for checking out the show, and we will see you soon.
Time is invented. Good luck implementing Calendly. Bye.
Time's fake, y'all.